Sigma just announced a brand new 50mm 1.2 DGD art lens. But how does that compare to the 1.4 version announced a little over a year ago? What's the difference? Let's take a look. Hey y'all, my name is Heather Larkin and I'm a photographer out of Athens, Georgia. I run my own photo studio and my focus is generally families and children. I am a total gear nerd and I love talking about lenses in particular. I'm a current Sigma ambassador, which means that occasionally I get sent lenses for review and sample images before they're announced. I had the E-mount version, which I used with my Sony a7R5, but it's available in an L-mount version as well. Getting right into it, these are both of the 50mm lenses. You can see here, side by side, they are nearly the same size, with the 1.2 version being just slightly chunkier. And they're nearly the same weight as well, with the 1.2 version being just slightly heavier. Obviously, one is a 1.4 and the other is a 1.2. But why would I buy the 1.2 version over the 1.4? The minimum focus distance for the 1.4 is 46 centimeters versus 40 centimeters on the 1.2 lens. That's only a difference of about 3 inches, so how does that translate to final images? I photographed the same subject with these two lenses at the same distance away, as well as the new lens's minimum focus distance to compare bokeh and depth of field. Here is the results side by side at the same distance and the same settings. So the first one is the 1.4 version and the second is the 1.2 version. I kicked the tripod a little bit so they don't completely line up, but the 1.2 version, the bokeh circles are just a little bit more round, as you can see. Now, here is the 1.2 version at 1.2. Circles open up, bokeh gets a little bit brighter in the background. Now, what happens when we move the 1.2 to its minimum focus distance? Just that 3 inches forward makes a big difference. You can see the difference between the 1.2 version and the 1.4 version at its minimum focus distance. And to me, the results are very, very different. The new 50mm 1.2 has a minimum focus distance of about 40 centimeters, which is about 8 inches off the front of the hood, which to me is absolutely insane. My other favorite lens is the 85mm 1.4, and its minimum focus distance is about 85 centimeters, which works out to about 2 feet off the front of the glass. I've run into situations several times where I'm photographing a child and they come to tickle me and they're closer than the lens's minimum focus distance. So having a closer lens that gets me the same look is incredible. No, I'm not photographing toddlers at 8 inches away because that would be really unflattering. But the minimum focus distance comes into play with other things like flowers. I almost wish this lens had a focus limiter switch on it to prevent it from focusing on things that are further away. But I solved that problem just by putting my hand in front of the glass and next to whatever it is that I'm photographing. Because depth of field is dictated by how close you are to your subject, getting a little bit closer in the 1.2 version versus the 1.4 version makes a big difference. So I have a couple of things that I photographed with the 1.4 version versus the 1.2 version. The 1.2 version is the first in all of these pairs. So let's see how it works out in real life situations. You can see here I've got a nice beautiful tulip, and again this is the 1.2 version, and the 1.4 version doesn't allow you to get quite as close, and the bouquet is just a bit different in the background. Let's swap back and forth again. Honestly, how are we feeling about that? I know how I feel. I like the 1.2 version better. Next up, I have these Pyrrhus flowers related to blueberries. I'm sure you can tell. And The 1.2 version is again just a little bit softer, a little bit closer, and a little bit more zen than the 1.4 version. Swap back and forth again, 1.2, 1.4. What do you think? All right, here we go. Another pair, 1.2 versus 1.4. To me, this is a really big difference in these pink flowers. The 1.2 is very soft and very art-like, and I just really love how this feels. And the 1.4 version is beautiful and lovely, but I don't love it as much. Oh, cherry blossoms. Okay, so this one, the difference is really obvious for me. 1.2 or 1.4. I definitely can see the softer background in the 1.2 versus the 1.4. Big, big difference for me. Got some more flowers. It was a very beautiful spring day. Loved it. All right, 1.2, 1.4. This one isn't as big of a difference to me, but I can still see it in the background. 1.2, 1.4. This one, again, nice and soft in the 1.2. Don't love it as much in the 1.4. And I tell you, I love the 1.4 lens up until I got the 1.2 version. 1.2, 1.4. The 1.4 version to me on this one is definitely different and has a little bit more of a crunchy bokeh in the background, which I don't dig. And the 1.2 version is a lot nicer. Now, last one, I've got some tulip pears, red and white, 1.2, 1.4. Big difference here again to me. I just love that 1.2. It's so much softer in the background and the separation of the subject is so much cleaner. What do you think? When I reviewed the 1.4, I mentioned that it has a very zen feeling to go out and use this lens because it encourages you to appreciate the transient natural beauty of what's around you. I'm not really sure exactly how it does that, but it totally does. I feel that way every time I pick up the lens. Since I started on a 50mm way back in the day when I started 20 years ago in business, the 50mm focal length kind of feels like coming home to me. It just clicks into place and makes my heart sing. Over the past year, I have found myself reaching for the 1.4 version over my 85mm 1.4 a little bit more often, and it's just because of that heart feeling. And that's the 1.4 version. The 1.2 has that feeling like magnified like 10 times. I immediately loved it. I immediately told my Sigma supervisor that he was not getting this lens back and he was going to have to pry it out of my cold, dead fingers. And it's just because it's such a joy to use. I find myself making up reasons to go pick up this lens and go take it out because it's just so much fun. It has quickly become my favorite lens that I've worked with recently. I say that, but I'm also going to follow up with not only is this lens my current favorite, but I think it might be my favorite lens that I've used in my entire 20 years of business. I'm a total gear nerd. If you have talked to me at a convention and I have talked your ear off about lenses, I'm sorry. But I just love gear and lenses specifically. For me to say that this lens is the best lens I have ever used in 20 years of portrait photography is a magnitude of greatness for Sigma. This is completely everything I would want in a 50mm portrait lens. The Sigma 50mm 1.2 DGTN art lens will be priced at $13.99, which I think is an absolute steal for this lens, and I will definitely be replacing my 1.4 version with the 1.2 version as soon as productions are available. At the time of this video, the 1.4 version is $849. Do I think it's worth an extra $600 to get the 1.2 version? Absolutely, yes, I do. Again, This is the best lens I have ever used, and I can't wait for you to see for yourself just how beautiful it really is. Thanks for watching, and I hope you love it as much as I do.